So I woke up one morning and I was 19, and I had a moment where I thought to myself, oh no, there goes my chance to be an anime protagonist that goes on fun and whimsical adventures with his friends. That's never gonna happen now. Although even in high school, I imagined myself being put into your typical slice of life friend group and someone calling the police over it. So, it was a pretty shitty plan, I think. That's kinda besides the point, though. I still had to stave off this arc's crisis, which will inevitably end with me making a skin suit out of a young, handsome K-pop singer. So I did the usual thing, where I tried to remember what being happy was like, and I had to go so far back that I remembered what LEGO Space Police was. So LEGO Space Police has existed since the late 80s, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a policing force that's jurisdiction is space. And I kind of imagine its creation went something like this. The LEGO UN equivalency met up in a dingy basement, and they were talking about how they needed some sort of way to enforce laws in space. But everyone also thought the idea of militarizing space was a really bad idea. And so we have the Space Police. They're an international organization. They're not the military, we swear. But little did they know the monster they created, because they chose to model themselves off of American police officers. I wouldn't say there were more innocent times, because it seems like whenever someone says that, it's because they were coddled during it. And I'm not a prude when it comes to violence, I'm a connoisseur when it comes to violence. Well, LEGO violence, I should clarify. But there's a pretty significant difference between seeing a LEGO man's head get exploded or shot full of bullets, and having the implication that the society these characters live in works on purging or criminalizing the non-dominant elements in it, out of both a combination of paranoia and sunk cost that's been put into treating them like that. One is significantly more fucked up despite the other being more graphic. It's not a small feat to accidentally have your toy line for 7 to 14-year-old boys go Starship Troopers on you unintentionally, which is why I kind of want to dissect this as much as I can. So the first major point to bring up. It's not clear whether there's systematic racism within the LEGO Space Police itself. It's never directly stated, and that's kind of what makes it as funny as it is. And if you don't know what I mean, every criminal in the line is an alien, and there's no aliens in the Space Police that we know of. Although we should point out that in one of the promotional videos, an alien did infiltrate the Space Police base, wearing one of the helmets, and everyone seemed to think that he was just another police officer, which seems pretty respectful at first, you know. But at the same time, someone who looks exactly like him is on a wanted poster right in front of them, and they couldn't identify that it was him. So, what it seemed like kinda happened here is they just stopped trying as long as they're wearing the helmet because they didn't want to be sent to Space HR. An important question to ask though is, why would the LEGO peoples be so racist towards aliens? And to know that, we have to look at the long sordid history between the LEGO peoples and the aliens they've interacted with. First we start with LEGO Monster Fighters, which was a series about a group of monster hunters who were trying to stop this vampire from using these things called the Moonstones to, quote, unleash the world of monsters into our own. And they just absolutely fucking failed. They just absolutely ate shit at stopping this from happening. And in a piece of promotional art, they showed this. These aliens are from another line that came out not long afterwards called Galaxy Squad. Guessing by some of these minifigures from Monster Fighters and the theming here, this is probably sometime between the LEGO equivalency of like the 1920s to the 1950s. Or more likely than anything, these are probably just a group of eccentric weirdos. One thing that is clear though is that it seems like the LEGO Galaxy Squad sets are part of a long protracted war against these bug aliens, and it appears that they've brapped half this planet to death from the looks of it. I'm pretty sure this isn't the first time they've made contact with intelligent aliens though, because someone probably made those Moonstones in the first place, and it seems like they knew what they were going to do from the sounds of unleash the world of monsters into our own. Then we have Alien Conquest, which came out in 2011. And it's a little unclear where it falls on the timeline. This obviously can't be the first invasion though, because the ADU seems relatively well equipped, and not only that, seemingly has their own equipment. If this was the first invasion, you wouldn't expect that they'd have a dedicated force for it yet, but they do, and it's big enough to presumably defend at least a large metropolitan area. However, these aren't the same aliens from Galaxy Squad. They look different, their technology looks significantly different from what the bugs have. If you compare the Galaxy Squad helmets and uniforms to what the ADU has though, they're pretty similar, but the ADU's technology seems more grounded still. What I'm assuming is that this is taking place after Galaxy Squad, and the reason the ADU has less advanced technology is because the ADU is the equivalent of like the National Guard, whereas the Galaxy Squad was like a frontline special forces kind of deal. Then there's also the Life on Mars mission lore, where they go to Mars and it's filled with these peaceful Martians who have all this amazing technology, but at the same time their society is very clearly falling apart. Their population is weirdly sparse in contrast to their technology, which would probably need some sort of large industrial terrestrial base to exist in the first place. Most of Martian society is shown to be underground because the surface looks like this, obviously. They do have a king and a rival faction of Martians trying to steal their resources and dethrone him, but it seems closer to like post-apocalyptic gangs fighting for dominance than any sort of serious government, partially because the rebels are just called the Canyon Martians. They're not Martians from a specific town or province or anything, they don't have a specific group name, they're just the Canyon Martians. Just a group of people hauled up in a canyon somewhere, I don't know. Just keep in mind that these aliens are only kind of peaceful, and they're also dying. Then Mars gets invaded by the separate species of green aliens, who are looking to mine these energy crystals, and the human faction gets in war with them over it, not to protect the native Martian population, they're not even mentioned, but because they're about to pull a Bush moment and also want these crystals. Also, this was a part of one of the sets. I'm not sure if this is a war crime, but that's probably because no one's tried this yet. Point being, 3 out of the 4 alien species they've met so far have been hostile, and the one constant with their efforts in space, even with those peaceful aliens, has been war. So that probably explains why they hate aliens. As a result, they're probably not allowed to have high-ranking positions out of fear for them being taken over from the inside, and also as a sort of revenge because this probably happened to their planet. Which is also why I assume the LEGO peoples have such robust space programs, because there's not really enough space anymore. Unless you want to live on the Brap continent. And this hatred of aliens has become so ingrained into society that all aliens have to live like they do in Space Police 3, even if they aren't related to those other ones. Now I know what you might be thinking. You're imparting too much of real-world history onto the fictional LEGO universe. You don't know that's how this happened, and you're kind of right, but here's the thing about that. LEGO is presenting this to an audience of people who live on Earth. What do you expect? Also, I thought LEGO was supposed to be all about whatever I interpret it to be. Are you gonna stifle my imagination here? Are you gonna be a real McHitler about this? I thought not. Anyways, with that context in place, we're going to look into those promotional videos we looked at earlier, because they're very insightful.
All units be advised of an A-14 in progress.
So what we see here doesn't seem too eventful, but what we do learn is that there's a lot of superficial similarities between this settlement and the American inner cities, or at least as much as you can depict with, like, sci-fi Lego bricks, I guess. My point is it's very clear that that's what they were going for, to the point where one of the criminals' nicknames is P. Squiddy in reference to an actual rap artist or rapist, P. Diddy. And if your minority population is relating to American hip-hop, it's probably not a very good sign for minority relations, but that's kind of besides the point right now, although it kind of is foreshadowing for things to come. We also learn that something big is on the horizon that the main character is concerned about, and that it's related to the Black Hole Gang, which has stolen a statue of some sort, they think, but he's not really concerned about no minor statue molestation. What's the real thing going on?
All units be advised of a 419 in progress. Space Police vehicle is being pursued through Sector 6 by a black sedan cruiser with red markings. Officers have a suspect in custody and need backup.
I know what you're thinking, he's in the middle of the city, why couldn't they get him backup? Also, why did he leave to the unpopulated part of the asteroid instead of going to a place closer to where backup was? There's an answer to that, but first you have to understand how powerful a force the Space NRA is in this universe. Every single vehicle in this series has weapons on it, so there's less collateral if he just leaves the city. Like the Space Police, maybe that would make sense, but why are these civilian vehicles allowed to have rocket launchers attached to them that are just perfect for breaking people out of jail? Why would you make it so the police are in a constant arms race with the civilian population? The answer is the Space NRA. Naturally, being shot by this causes him to crash and he destroys this guy's ice cream stand, and that's gonna be important. Remember that later. Remember this motherfucker. He finally crashes safely and the Skull Twins here have captured this big-ass Space Police laser and fucking destroy his patrol ship. They drive off and it turns out someone's recording this.
Hey, shut down that video camera!
Oh my god. So they're forcefully suppressing information that these known criminals have stolen this big-ass, presumably taxpayer-funded piece of Space Police technology. You know, you'd figure that's something you'd want people to know in case they saw that truck, but I guess the PR they'd lose from, people finding out they lost their big expensive laser to a dangerous criminal organization is what's stopping them there. That's certainly something.
Oh boy, I remember that day. It looked like another slow Nova rise in good old Space Sector 6. But that was about to change. Its squad was filling us in on the latest space crook activity.
So these officers were talking about the big oopsie, and how this gang now has a genuine piece of space police technology.
Genuine, state-of-the-art space police laser.
Implying that there's knockoff space police technology that might be being sold somewhere. God damn, the Space NRA has so much money to throw around. Then this guy plants a bomb, you know, presumably as a prank for his YouTube channel. Then he fails and gets arrested, so their entire conversation they just had has been compromised. Man, it's almost like they shouldn't have been talking about this out in public. Almost like the police should have a specific room in their station for talking about these kinds of things privately.
All non-patrol units in Sector 6, please be advised of a central precinct briefing at 1800 solar hours.
So our main character is going along and comes across this scene. I'm not sure what this is supposed to be exactly, but I always thought it was kind of unsettling. Looks like some sort of car crash maybe, or like someone killed a taxi driver and just left them out in the street like that. Turns out it's neither of those things though, and he's just been tricked by an orc from Warhammer 40k, which is embarrassing for so many reasons. So we cut to Space Police headquarters, and this is the scene I was talking about earlier where they can't recognize the alien that's like right on the wanted board in front of them. I know he's wearing a mask, but he should have taken off the mask to begin with, because otherwise it defeats the entire purpose of taking a mugshot. So I'm assuming if they left his helmet on in the mugshot, they're expecting them to be able to identify it's him even if he doesn't have his helmet on, which they can't. Then they reveal that their plan to solve the problem that's the result of them being irresponsible with their expensive and dangerous equipment is to buy more expensive and dangerous equipment. They literally cannot think to solve problems any other way. We're in outer space, but it feels so familiar. Then they see the imposter and they chase him out, whatever.
All units, possible 211 in progress. Please
Okay, now this is where shit starts to fly off the handle. This one's a wild one.
proceed with Red Dwarf Ice Cream Stand in Sector 6. Suspect is multi-armed and dangerous. Approach with caution.
I'm pretty sure one of the #1 rules for being a dispatch officer should be that you're not allowed to use the dispatch to make racist remarks about the people you're arresting. Like, armed and dangerous, I get it. But in-universe, why would they feel the need to make a joke about the fact that he's a different species? Also, what makes them think he's dangerous? He's just selling fucking ice cream here. Who called about this? It turns out, though, that this guy actually did have stolen gold. The female police officer finds it behind his ice cream store without showing the viewers. That's very convenient.
Well, let's sprinkle some crack on him and get out of here.
So then the ice cream store owner, Frenzy, tries to escape and hits his head onto this armored car that's incredibly susceptible to sniper fire. Then our main character says this.
Once a four-armed reptilian bad guy, always a four-armed reptilian bad guy, I always say.
Dude, what the fuck? Don't say that on the radio. You're gonna get us all in trouble again. I'm sorry, I can't get over the fact that this officer thinks that if you're this specific species of alien, there's no chance of rehabilitation. Because again, in-universe, why would he feel the need to add four-armed reptilian to that statement, unless he was talking about this specific type of alien? And that he also implies that he says this frequently. So they take the fact that he tried to escape as a sign that he's guilty, and then destroy his ice cream stand to get the rest of the gold for no reason. Why didn't you just take the gold out of the building rather than risk destroying the entire safe? But also, the rest of the gold was in the building? So if she went inside and that police officer got the gold there, he probably would have noticed her and responded, or we would have seen her in there, right? It's not a very large building. So did Frenzy hide a singular bar of gold in the alleyway behind his store?
I mean, really, how could you know, though? How could anyone else know? You know, I mean, maybe you should have seen something a little suspicious. Don't you think it was like a little suspicious? Just a little suspicious? Every dead black person the police find has crack sprinkled on them. I mean, come on.
He did steal a safe, but they probably broke so many laws here, and it seems like they might be responsible for planting evidence. They didn't even have a warrant, but they destroyed this guy's entire business. For the second time! Jesus, no wonder he resorted to theft. The police keep destroying his way of making a living while following the law. Yeah, they got an actual criminal this time, but what's going to happen the next time they see another alien in an ice cream stand? Are they going to be right every time? I can't imagine that's the case given their difficulties telling aliens apart from each other.
All units be advised. Surveillance in progress at Chatty's intergalactic junkyard.
Roger that. We're moving into position.
Space police officers en route. Request assistance. All units in Sector 6, please respond.
Establishing radio silence.
This is it. Our informant told us that all the major Black Hole Gang players are going to be meeting here tonight. No way they can resist getting their tentacles on a genuine piece of space police technology.
Bad guys in position. Establish radio silence.
Like astro moths to the flame, boys.
Move it.
Astro moths to the flame.
Stop right there. There's no way to escape.
Looks like there's still an astromoth or two out there. And that's why we're always on patrol.
All units be advised. Suspect last seen in Sector 6. Suspect is yellow, average height, with one eye and extremely bad breath.
Alright, so outside of the continued professionalism from the dispatcher there's not really a lot to say about this one, but I imagine all the space monies that probably went into making that giant-ass spaceship for them to capture criminals with, and they only captured, like, 3 out of 4. Money well spent. I guess Space Lockheed Martin probably thinks so. Did you notice something, though? They never recovered that laser. You know, the entire reason the Black Hole Gang was so dangerous? They spent all this money on this vehicle and they didn't get the laser back. Why did they do this? And why is this the last of the logs? Why is this the ending? They didn't solve anything. We've seen how easy it is to break people out of those pods. I don't understand. They didn't solve anything. Regardless of whether or not they solved anything though, that's the end of the logs. It probably ended this way because LEGO has a policy of not telling you how to play with your toys, even if it's unsatisfying, unless it's like Bionicle or something, I don't know. That's the end of the logs, but that's not the end of Space Police proper. With the final wave being about the elite Space Police, this last wave gives us a look into the inner city that we only saw pieces of before, and although it's very brief, there are some interesting details in it. Let's look at the helmets that the elite Space Police use in this wave. Do they look familiar? That's right, the elite Space Police are using military surplus. Things get a lot more intense the deeper you go into the city from how it looks. Don't get me wrong, people on the outskirts were breaking each other out of jail with missiles and stealing money. In the inner city, however, people are just stealing entire ATM machines out of the walls and shooting at patrol ships with giant rocket launchers. Not even from a ship, just ballsy enough to do it from a rooftop, I guess. A lot of the villains are recolors from the last wave, but I wouldn't say they're any less interesting lore-wise. Like the guy with the rocket launcher. That guy works for the Black Hole Gang, but is wearing a Blacktron uniform. If you don't know who Blacktron are, they're an incredibly large villain faction that also dates back to the 80s. And they're a lot of things, but they aren't small time, which makes me think that this may have gone a lot deeper than we initially expected, but they never elaborate on that. Then we have this guy Squidtron, who's a robot built by P. Squiddy from earlier, because he wanted to have an underling, but he became sentient and escaped. Also, I think this is pretty obvious, but just so we're all on the same page here, he probably made the robot to have sex with it. The lore even alludes to this. He claims to be the king of the squid men, but there's no other aliens on record that look like him, so he made a robot that looks like himself, because he doesn't have anything else in terms of reference for his species other than himself, because he's the only one in the setting. So I think it's pretty clear what he intended to do with it. He even built it so he could literally, quote, boss it around. They also revealed the guy in charge of the entire Black Hole Gang. No space police officer has ever seen his face. He is so good at evading the police that they wonder if he's even a real guy, and I shit you not, he's actually named Brick Daddy. And I think you know where I'm going with this, but if you don't, this is what he looked like. The head honcho is a space pimp, and I almost thought the world wasn't a very magical place. Actually, I'm profiling here too, I think. You know, he just drives a fancy limo and dresses like a pimp and goes by a stereotypical pimp nickname. That's all we know, but if there's one thing the Space Police has taught me, it's you go with your gut on these kinds of things. That's the end of Space Police, though. I wish they had followed up on some of the plot hooks, but the world building is obviously the most interesting part. I'm 90% sure what happened is they thought, this is a line about police. What are some common jokes about police we can add to put some levity into all of this? And this was the end result. Space-themed, Reagan-era tough-on-crime phrases and concepts on how effective policing works, right down to the profiling. I don't really cast any sort of serious judgment on space police. I don't really see what that would accomplish. This is kind of interesting though, because it seems like this is kind of what the baseline was for what people kind of expected from police officers, and just no one read between the lines on that, which is also why I don't want to see any of these videos going anywhere, but that's pretty much it, outside of one thing.
Send out the prisoner transporter. Set the bait and wait for Brick Daddy. And wait for Brick Daddy. Wait for Brick Daddy.